Hi, Brian, again.
Hi, Hayley.
We were just talking about how we feel like we're each other's anchor in the week.
Yeah, and I don't know that it hits me until I actually see your face and smile. That this is an important
It's a
recharging.
culture ritual.
Yeah,
It really
yeah.
is. It's
And we
wonderful.
also talked a little bit about before we started recording about breathing, and you asked me how I was, and I said that I'm aware, with different stress factors that I'm not breathing. And it shocks me because I know intellectually better uh, to to uh, to breathe and how important it is. But I think we hold our breaths, when we're feeling tense.
And I think when we're tense, we tend to go to a mindset which is very complicated. We see problems and we see issues, which is very complicated and seems very
Yeah.
complex. And we forget that breathing is just this very simple technique. So to be able to have that awareness of, I just need to breathe. Oh, wait, my body
Uh-huh.
knows how to do that. And to
Uh-huh.
get out of that mindset of complicated just to the very simple. And it has been a theme very much over the last week in terms of coming back to the simple. As far down you go on the path, as advanced you get in the energetic realm and metaphysics and all that kind of stuff, the root of all of that, the foundation of all of that, is the very simple techniques. Breathing,
Being
allowing
in the
breath
moment.
to
Uh-huh.
slow down space so that you can be present, simply touching your heart so you can create that heart connection. And I think we get so used to just moving and saying, oh, checkbox got that foundation. I'm all the way over here now. And we
Hmm.
feel it almost like a jolt that, have I failed that now I actually have to think, did I breathe?
Hmm. Hmm.
When I
And
think that is the most powerful step, is to be able to say, oh, I'm not breathing. No wonder everything's crazy right now.
exactly. And the other thing we do, I think, is we pile on problems.
Mm.
Not only am I sick of cooking, but I can't believe the governor of Texas is letting people take their mask off. And I can't believe that people are actually going to try to overthrow the government. And I can't believe, and then suddenly you're not cooking.
You're in a world of disbelief.
Right, right,
It's a
right.
very interesting place. And I think on top of that, too, March has been a very weird month. And I know we're only 4 days into it, but I don't know if we're paying enough attention to how much of an influence from an outside perspective March is on us in a subconscious way. March is the beginning of COVID. It's now been a year since life has changed. So, I think there is that subconscious feeling in all of us that, like, wait, weren't we supposed to be back to normal?
Yeah.
And there's a crash of disappointment where you're like, we're not.
Uh-huh.
How much more of this is there? So
And
there's
I think,
that, trying to breathe when you have all of that piling on. And then you have this subconscious thing of, wait, we're supposed to be back to normal. This was supposed to be a short thing. It's 2021.
especially if you've had your second vaccination,
Yeah.
once you've had your second vaccination, at least from my experience, you think, okay, you know, now let's go to the movies.
Yeah, like
And
back to normal. And it's
and yeah,
it's
I
not.
had a I attended a meeting. It was virtual for many people, but a group of us gathered in a large auditorium, and we were all socially distanced in terms of from each other space-wise. And I didn't wear a mask because I felt like, we had already dealt with the distancing, and it was a large auditorium. Got taken to task by one of the people at home for, and so one of the things I wanted to talk to you too about today is the whole issue of shaming.
Oh,
And
great topic.
yeah, and
Great
whether
topic.
can we be shamed without our permission. uh, Sometimes it's pretty hard to separate yourself from the experience of being shamed, uh, and uh, and those shaming experiences can last with you a lifetime.
They're injuries.
Yeah.
They're injuries. And I do, in the work that I do, shame is a really powerful traumatic event, you know?
Talk more about what is shame to you, and how does it impact us, and can it happen without our consent?
Yeah. So I think going backwards, which seems to be another theme, I keep starting from backwards. But can we be shamed without a permission? No. We have to give our permission to be able to be shamed, to be able to be
Praised.
praised, to be able to be hurt, to be able to be protected. It all requires our permission. And I think that's a really tough concept to understand, because we're more than happy to say, oh, I give you permission to praise me. And then we're like, no, I didn't give you permission to shame you. No, it's the same spectrum. If you can give permission to praise, you can give permission to be shamed. If you can praise somebody, you can just as easily shame somebody. So we always have, this wonderful concept of free will. What do you allow in? And that is the work, I think, in terms of what I see, at least, in being a human with a heart, is taking responsibility and being able to find that truth in you of saying, I hear the words you're saying, I will not take them on.
And you don't even have to articulate that. You can just say it to yourself.
Yeah, and I think this is where, our auric boundaries are so helpful and so powerful, that if you're aware of your boundaries, if you're aware of your energy, people can spew at you, and you can just, you can hear it, but it doesn't have a charge. And it is our trauma that allows that charge to connect. So when it's a very holistic circle of, you cannot be a person of trauma and not give permission to shame. You have to look at the trauma to be able to say, I will not allow myself to be shamed anymore.
I think people who need approval are more likely to feel shame.
Absolutely. Shame comes from fear, but shame is just this hopeless sense of being a human. Like, I'm not good enough. I don't deserve anything. And, self-sabotage is all about shame.
I was, when I was in second grade, I think it was, a friend talked to me in class, and I responded, and the nun sent us both out to stand in the hallway, which was big shame in second grade, that you would be, your classmates would see you, the best little boy in the world, was sent out into the hallway. So I said to the nun afterwards, Sister, am I going to get a bad grade because of what happened? She said, well, if you're as good as gold for the rest of the year, then it won't impact you. So every day I would say, Sister, was I as good as gold today?
Sweet, man.
But I think she, by the end of the year, was in an insane asylum.
But I think
Stop that kid from asking me about being good as gold.
The genius of children, and we all have it even though we're adults, we have that genius of our inner child in there, is that even at that young age, you are realizing that if I do something wrong, can I neutralize that? Can I do something to atone for that? And it is truly be as good as gold. Allow that gold light within you to be in your heart and act from a place of that pure gold.
Mm-hmm. Even if your initial concern was the opinion of other people.
Whatever it takes to get there, all paths lead to the same place.
Yeah. Which is
back to your heart, back to love. And some of us are, depending on where we are in our karmic lifetimes and our soul evolution, some lifetimes it looks like a very simple and clear path, and everybody's like, man, life's so easy for him. It's so easy. And for other people, it's literally like running through brick walls every single time. The destination doesn't change.
Okay, switching subjects, just because that's the way my mind works.
I love it.
how comfortable are you talking about sexuality?
I'm so intrigued by it. I find it this massive mystery. So I'm so intrigued by it, but I'm also very well of my comfort zone, and what I call that comfort zone, the prude.
And so you grew up in Zimbabwe with parents that weren't particularly religious, is that right?
Not religious. They were absolutely not affectionate with each other. There was no talk about sex. You just didn't talk about sex. It was not right to talk about sex.
So the silence is what communicated to you that it was a subject not to be talked about?
And if anybody looked sexy, if anybody was doing anything like sex, they were slut shamed. They were a slut. They were a whore.
And that
message usually
came...
the woman, the men, they're cool.
Oh, he was,
yeah,
he's a dude.
Men.
Yeah, he's a dude. I mean, he's
you know, he's a funny guy going through all those women. One day he'll settle down.
Right.
But the
women
they're all always slut shamed, and my sister and I were girls. So.
And did that judgment come from your friends as much as it did from teachers and parents?
It was never spoken about. It mostly came from teachers, parents. The kids never spoke about sex.
Do you see a link in your own life between your spirituality and your sexuality?
Yes.
What is that? And when did you discover it?
I'm still discovering it. There is absolutely a link in there, because I think sexuality, in the way that I am learning about it now and realigning to, is a very whole aspect of one's spirituality. It is a very powerful expression of one's spirituality. It is a powerful, we've spoken about it too, how powerful the act of sex is when it is in that honorable space. Where I am at right now is trying to come out of that prickly zone where it's like, no, into, all right. Coming out from that very rigid box into a more softer circle.
Okay, well, let me keep pushing.
Go for it.
I write a column in the gay press down in Florida, and a lot of my readers are older guys, gay men. And the subject that I have been writing about this week is masturbation. And, that's a word that I would not have comfortably said in my 20s, probably, until I started getting a good sex education, which I got by attending this summer training that I was part of. It was a shush subject. You didn't talk about masturbation. Yeah. But I think I may have told you that I did a podcast with a guy who has a jack-off club, and where guys up to 100 come together and are naked and touch one another. And there are rules about no penetration, etc. And I personally see this as a healthy opportunity for some people who are lonely and hungry for touch to find what they're looking for. Mm-hmm. Now, is it making, we create this highly spiritual comfort zone to talk about sex between loving partners being an expression of their deep affection. But what if they're strangers? But can you in that moment create a divine exchange? Now, I'm not talking about the moment of orgasm, although that doesn't eliminate it, but the moment of eye contact, the moment of being allowed to touch. I think we need to talk about the healthiness of sexuality. You talked a minute ago about the word, you used the word dirty. It was dirty if you talked about it. And an older person, often an older man who talks about sex, is, often labeled a dirty old man.
Mm-hmm.
Well, why is it dirty? Why is old and sex combined create dirty? Or often you'll see in a film, younger people portrayed as saying to their parents, "Oh, I don't want to hear it, la 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 la," because they didn't want to hear their parents talk about being sexual, as if it was gross, as if it was a turnoff or inappropriate. And where does that come from? In my own life, and I'll just say this and then stop. In my own life, one of my great breakthroughs, and this is, so here I'm risking with you, and I may have already shared this with you, but during masturbation, men, and I'm assuming women, create fantasies, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so where am I? Who am I with? What's going on, in order to increase excitement. Right? And so one time I decided to make love with Jesus. Okay.
That's awesome. Well, why not?
Well, exactly why not? Because in my mind at that time, I was affirming the humanness of Jesus, and went through Jesus must have had hiccups. Jesus must have thrown up at once or twice. Jesus must have been constipated at times. Right? I mean, these are
he must have sneezed and snotted all over the place.
Right. These are human experiences. So, okay, so if Jesus was fully human, he must have had a wet dream. He must have had sexual feelings, because that's human. If he didn't have any of that, then he wasn't human. So there is no incarnation, right?
Mm-hmm.
The whole thing was that, I don't believe that a special soul was sent into this body and it only was going to happen once forever. I believe it happens every day, but on his own, Jesus discovered, or not on his own, with the help of rabbis and his parents and friends, he discovered, the path that made sense to him, that he wanted to follow. So when I had felt really estranged from Jesus because of Jerry Falwell and the whole moral majority, and bumper stickers that said "honk if you love Jesus," and these are the same people that would be opposed to gay rights. It just felt right for me to create a fantasy of making love with Jesus, right? And so when I had my orgasm in this fantasy and allowed in my mind that Jesus did too, that was the only time I've ever done it, but it broke through for me an amazing coupling of my spirituality and my physicality, my body, the dual nature of human and divine, because I had met in a sacred space the human and the divine in a orgasmic sexual experience. What do you think about that?
I think the fundamental thing, thank you very much for sharing, but the fundamental—
Are you gonna call a priest and get me to have confession after we hang up?
Oh, Brian, I am a minister. I don't need to call anybody.
Okay.
But I think the fundamental thing there is Jesus was human. All of these spiritual guides that we talk about now, these gods, were all human at some point. Every single one of them participated in the human experience, of which sex is a very big part of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, being able to be conscious enough and aware enough of the breath, but aware enough of, if it's right over here, then it must be right over here too, and not contradicting your views is really important. In my journey to sort of try and understand sort of where that idea of sex is dirty, or sex is wrong, sex is a sin, sex is evil comes from, and trying to understand now, part of the spiritual world has a very strong sense and a very strong foundation on sex. Tantra is a spiritual sexual experience. It's all around sexual energy, and how do you make the most of that sexual energy? Because it's been around sex, it's now being put onto this thing of like, that's almost pornographic.
What is pornographic?
Sorry?
What is pornography?
I think pornography is just a way of controlling people to say that you can't do that. It's too much power. We can get back to that too, because I do want to talk about like how we got to the point of sex being dirty. In my sort of education of what spirituality is for me, and really connecting with these gods, these guides that I have been taught by and I have connection with, in every single one of those stories, there were stories of orgies. There were stories of sex. There were stories of experimenting and being open. And, there's a huge idea that the divine feminine was all about exploring the woman's body and being completely connected to your body, where there were no boundaries, there were no barriers, there was no go zone. I think that if you are going to say that you are on a spiritual journey, and if you are going to be truthful and authentic about it, there is this concept of a no-go zone has to be eliminated. How can you know your body if you will not explore your body? How can you know your mind if you will not know your mind or explore your mind? How can you know your spirituality if you do not explore spirituality? And you have to look at all of those aspects. And in all of those aspects where you feel the prickle, where you feel that resistance of like, oh my God, this is so dirty. All right, you've just got growth. Go for it. Go figure out the truth, find out the truth around this. And that is how we, again, come back to love, come back to our heart. Do I think that, a jack-off club is terrible? I think it's awesome. I'm like, it feels like it's a very safe place for a community of people to come together. If you're allowed to come together to play cards and drink and talk about women as if they are conquests, why can't you have a jack-off club? Same thing,
Well,
have a bunch of people.
Actually, it's far more sacred, the jack-off club
and
is than the poker game, if indeed the conversation.
The people in the poker game consider that sacred, just as the jack-off club considers that sacred.
Right.
You both have every right to have those things. They're the same thing. They're people creating a community about something they're interested in. The difference here is the vibration. Sacredity isn't, for something to be sacred, it doesn't mean that it can only be a vibration of absolute purity. Any ritual is sacred to the person performing it.
What would you say to the proposition of a Jill-off club?
I know that they exist.
Do they?
They do, which is...
Now, see, I made up the term, I thought.
You're talking about the women
who come together.
Yeah,
I mean,
they 100% exist. 100% exist.
My friend Betty Dodson used to have women come together in a circle and with mirrors look at their labias and expose their clitoris.
I know for a fact that they exist in New York.
Do they?
And if they exist in New York, I'm pretty sure they exist in a very small town in the middle of America, because that's where we keep things hidden.
So it's a place for women to come together and experience pleasure.
Groups and women groups where they come together and they learn, teach, share. It's a thing. And,
I think that's great.
I think it always comes down to the intention. If you are doing something with the intention of being free and not harming any being, including yourself, then surely that's of the heart, whatever it is. When you cloud that intention and you have an intention from a place of fear and I need to do this because they're going to take it from me, or I need to protect myself by harming another human because they're going to take it from me. Is your intention really from the heart? No, your intention's from fear, it's from trauma.
Mm-hmm. So, so going to the whole idea of a life review.
So interesting.
Yeah. So let's say that, you know, your parents are sitting with you during the life review. We can have these great growth experiences of insisting that sex is sacred, but we would rather have them see us rescuing a kitten than see us stimulating ourselves to orgasm.
Indeed. Indeed. It's the life review. I have a client who's the family is in a process of one of the members transitioning and started last night and it's sort of going into today. And he was in sort of that in between worlds life review. And all of his family were trying to, you know, from one side being sort of the very alive family, trying to rush and resolve everything in the few minutes that he's still alive. And then what it looks like for him on the other side, where he's like, shit, do I need to do all of this now? The life review, when you have, you know, you sit with all the people that have been in your life, both the ones that have been traumatic as well as the ones that have been pure love. It's chaos. The ones I see are very chaotic. I would hope that when it comes to my life review, it can be a place of thankfulness.
Mm-hmm. And just, I mean, I think one ought to be able to experience how your behavior impacted others, but I don't think you need others sitting there. And if they were, in my mind, they'd already be enlightened enough to appreciate and not shame or, you know, want to impose, you know, what they see going on.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting that you're speaking about that, just because I had that experience last night. And then actually this morning I spoke to my mother for the first time in a year and a half, maybe.
Oh boy.
I actually don't remember the last time I spoke to her. I think it's been at least a year and a half. And it was very interesting because being able to sort of be with this gentleman as he's sort of in between worlds and everybody on this side is panicking, trying to resolve and trying to heal everything. He's on this side going, wait, do I go this way? Do I have to stay and resolve all this before I can go? Mm-hmm. And then to speak to my mother and be able to see my life review when I'm speaking to her, which happens, you know, I always take this moment, and especially with her, to be able to see how much I've grown, to be able to be in a space with her and still hold my power, still hold me, still be in my heart no matter what. And I had that experience today where I was like, girl, you've grown.
Did you see growth in your mother too?
No.
It's likely she has, but maybe wasn't able to express it to you because you fell into old roles.
I think that's a very interesting and worthwhile observation, because in my perspective here is to look for the triggers and to see how I react. Can I be neutral or am I reacting? So I'm looking for those very specific triggers. And when she comes at me with them, there's almost a sense of like, oh, see, you haven't grown. But I think, you know, for her to actually just have a conversation with me without trying to resolve everything is growth itself. Mm-hmm. And to actually, you know, end that conversation from a place of, let's speak again. Whether or not we're going to speak again anytime soon doesn't matter, but just to, you know, the growth is in that container of space where two people came together, they were able to converse in a calm way and to end the conversation in hope.
You say it's your first conversation. is it your first communication? Do you write back and forth between with your mom?
We do WhatsApp messages every now and then, just more of a check-in. So when I moved to Mexico, I let them know that I was in Mexico. If there's any massive world events that are impacting either one of us, we'll do a quick check-in from that perspective. We don't necessarily do birthdays. There's a check-in at Christmas or Thanksgiving, but there's no consistent check-in. There's no scheduled routine check-in. It's, in a year, there might be 4 check-ins, if that.
When is your birthday?
December 31st.
Oh, wow. I think we talked about that. Yeah. My sister's is December 30th.
Good people, man.
Yeah. You were born on the cusp of the new year.
Yeah.
It makes me sad you don't hear from them on your birthday.
Well, I hear from my parents on my birthday. They send me a message, but the rest of the family I don't really hear from, and I'm fine.
Yeah.
I have a thing about birthdays. I'm like, if you're not going to be in touch with the person and not wanting to be, I just have a thing about birthdays. It's kind of like about saying I love you without understanding what you're trying to say. Don't just put love as the label. Don't just put birthday as a label. So, I was the first one to stop sending birthday messages to my family, because when I thought of them on their birthday, it created so much turmoil, and it just lit up all of that trauma. And I was just like, I'm not sending a message to somebody from a place where I'm just like, I don't really want to do this. I'm doing it because I have to.
Mm-hmm.
So I was the first one to stop sending birthday messages. And this was the first year, which ironically sort of reconciled with my mother's 70th birthday. It was the first year that her birthday came around, and hers is her first birthday in the year, where I could sit with myself and be like, all right, I can send this birthday message with well wishes and a wish for peace without being concerned with how it will be received.
Do you ask your mother whether she listens to your podcast?
No.
Is she aware of them?
I don't think so. I know she's not on Instagram or social media. I don't know if I think they know I have a web page, but I have no interaction in terms of this is the work I'm doing, this is what I'm working on, nothing like that. I have had some interaction with one of my aunts who is very interested in the work that I'm doing on the Mayan side, just from a sort of metaphysical perspective.
Mm-hmm.
But nobody in my family has acknowledged the work that I'm doing. Which
they probably don't know how to,
I don't think that they know how to, and I've never presented it to my family. I've never had this, opening to say, this is what I'm doing. I just did it. And I just put it out there. I didn't send a message saying, oh, so this is what I'm doing. Let me know what you think. Or before I do it, let me know what you think. I just did it.
Mm-hmm.
And if they see it, great. If they, don't, probably, some of it probably is safer. The whole family breakdown, it's been years, decades building, but sort of the straw that broke the camel's back is that I posted a video on my Facebook account from a motivational speaker called Prince EA, and he created this video about I quit. And the headline was I quit. And then he went into, dear family and friends, I quit trying to live up to expectations. I quit trying to be the person everybody thinks I should be. I quit trying to live, all this life of everything that should, would, could, when I haven't even asked myself the question, who am I? And I posted that video saying, oh my God, this really, and it was very early on in sort of, as soon as it was probably 6 months after I left banking. And I was like, this summarizes the process that I'm going through or have been through to get to where I am. My family saw that and instantly turned it into Hayley has quit the family. Hayley believes the family is not good enough for her now.
Mm-hmm.
And I had, as much as I tried to, I even took a transcript of the video and sent it around. I'm like, please watch the video. This is the transcript. Didn't mean anything. It was,
No.
you have quit the family. You now believe we are not good enough for you. Who the hell do you think you are?
Well, they were prepared for that message. They expected that message. And so when they got it, they responded accordingly. I mean, when you were talking about yourself and your family not really being aware of, or I'm sure you grew up in a box that, you know, it was kooky Hayley, and what's she going to do next?
I think I was the headline, you know, it was like, what trouble has Hayley got into? Hayley question this time.
Right. So it didn't surprise them to see a video that said, I quit. And they undoubtedly were ready to personalize it.
I think so. And we did, you know, I came from a place where every single decision was first spoken to from my parents, and I received permission from my parents for every single decision.
Until what age?
30? No, 30. When did I get to that? Till 2016. So I was what, 38?
Oh, no kidding. Our experiences are different in that way. I was sort of, you know, I mean, they paid for my college education, for which I'm very grateful. And I feel like I wasted a lot of it by playing bridge. But once I graduated, even before that, you know, filing as a conscientious objector, they were horrified. At least my father was. So coming out was no big surprise that Brian's going to do his own thing. But I don't know how much time we have, but I wanted to, you raised the issue of I quit. How much time?
About 15 minutes still.
Okay. So in these 15 minutes, and we'll do more of this, but it sounds like I quit had a powerful impact on you. What else did? What helped bring Hayley to where she is from early memories? You know, who influenced you? What influenced you?
I think I always, from a very human perspective, when we're talking about physical humans, the greatest impact on me were my grandparents, my mother's parents. And in saying this, I fully honor that she had a different experience with them than I did. But they were so neutral with me, so just took me for me and encouraged me to just keep going. And they protected me just like they were my major influences. And even, you know, they've both passed on, and I still connect with my grandparents. My grandmother helps me immensely with my business, and my grandfather helps me immensely in being patient. But so they were sort of the biggest influences. As I got older, I had one teacher, Mr. Yin, another one who saw me and was just like, treated me with respect. I mean, I was 10, but he treated me with respect and treated me like, actually wanted to listen to me, which I was just like, this guy's an angel. And then there weren't really any major influences until I was, you know, I think the Buddha, Siddhartha, was a very big sort of influence in my transition. In that sort of, it's okay to sit under a tree and be quiet. He was probably the next big thing. And then from there, it's him, Thich Nhat Hanh, huge influence. And now it's a lot. I mean, the Egyptians. Sekhmet is a huge influence in my life. So is Anubis.
Why? I'm not familiar with them, and maybe other people wouldn't be either.
Well, they're from the Egyptian Golden Age. So when you look at sort of the pyramids in Egypt, it's Sekhmet, it's Anubis. They're considered Egyptian gods. And they came as soon as I opened up and said, all right, let me see what these hands are about. Let me see what I'm actually seeing. they literally like flicked me on the forehead and said, "Look at me." And I literally had pictures of them, went and looked at the internet and scrolled through pictures and pictures of Greek gods and put a finger on. I was like, that's one of them and that's the other one. And it was Anubis and Sekhmet. So they have been very strong. Why them? I think it goes back to past lives. It goes back to contractual agreements. My connection with them is very past life, though.
Mm-hmm.
And
It's
now,
past life.
this past life, or
No, you're saying it's a past life connection.
yeah. And I think now, as I'm going into this phase, I consider you a massive influence. My friend Leah is a huge influence. You guys are my rocks, sort of my little anchors. I have three anchors, and you're sort of the ones that sort of keep me sort of like, Hayley, come back.
Where would you go otherwise?
I think I've never thought about where would I go otherwise, because I'm still stuck in that place of like, how lucky am I? How blessed am I to have you? How blessed am I to have Leah? How blessed am I to have this friend of mine who irritates the heck out of me, but my goodness, he pushes me. He does it from such a place of like love, which is pushing me, which is irritating me, for me to be able to be like, are you in your heart? And it's my little triangle where I'm just like, I don't look to see where I would be or what I would do doing. I'm still in that bliss of how blessed am I?
Okay, so let's circle back to our topic of sexuality.
Well, before we circle back to sexuality, who are your influences?
Well, Jesus was clearly, and Francis of Assisi, and we've talked about that, and Siddhartha. But it's interesting when you talked about Siddhartha and the impact that you mentioned was that it was okay to sit under the tree and do nothing. For me, the influence was it's important to have as many experiences as you can, because the Buddha went through, at least according to the story, a whole period of sexuality and sensuality and exposing orgies, and because he fasted with one group of people and gave up everything, and another group of people he probably smoked some pot or whatever they had.
I'm sure he did ayahuasca too.
Yeah, so that had a big influence. But when I was thinking about this question, and this is a real simplistic answer, and I'm sure there's more, but one movie that really impacted me was A Christmas Carol. Because it kept reinforcing the message throughout my life that even scoundrels, the people that you can't stand to be around or see, can have a redemptive moment. Where Scrooge, after having the 3 visits, totally changes. And your heart is just, I didn't personalize it because I'd never thought of myself as a scoundrel, but it gave me hope when dealing with, others, that it's possible for a turnaround, no matter what. I think the better known they are, the harder it is to do a turnaround, because they buy into an image of themselves.
And I think people box them into that image. So no matter how much they try to get out of it, people hold them in it.
Right. But that doesn't mean that they still can't get out. They can still say, I've had enough, time out. I don't care if I get another script. I don't care if I make any more money. This is not the person I want to be.
Yeah.
It's just not. And so when I think about my approach to other people and life itself, knowing that the play that you've been acting in does not need to end the way the reader expects, right?
So, man, I could talk to you all day, Brian. I think that's such an interesting concept. And I think when the name of our time together is, are you happy without the movie? And for whatever reason, which is not apparent to me right now, but the whole concept of not necessarily movie making, but TV movie making, how it starts from this concept, it gets written, and then how what eventually ends up in the actual TV, what we see, is different from what was written.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this entire process, this flow of yes, no, maybe, more possibilities. And I think it is so ironic that it is like life, where we're never boxed into what is originally written. Our past does not dictate our future.
Yes, and we can at any time, and it's up to us.
Yeah, free will.
It helps to have positive influences in your life, which is why one should surround themselves with people who feed their soul and not vex their spirit. But it's possible to say at some point in your life, this is not how I want to die. I don't want to be this person that I kept saying yes to becoming.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a person that I admire. It's not a person that I, as a child, would want to look up to. So, what are my options here? How can I change? And the one thing I was thinking, this piece that you were impressed with, the I quit, right? The person who actually makes that decision, I quit, doesn't need to say it, right? They don't need to put it out there for anybody, because putting it out there is still buying into your need to be understood and supported in the decision that you're making, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So you can say to yourself, this is not, I'm not going to do it this way anymore.
Oh shoot, I do have to run in 5, but I think we need to have a actual thing just fully on sexuality, because I have so many questions for you. And then I think, talking about this concept of when you make that decision to stop being what you were and open up into the possibility of who you can be, does that need to be announced? Or is it always a quieter path?
It depends on the personality, I would think,
I think, if you truly stop and try to do something different,
mm-hmm.
It is a very fine line between how that's delivered. Are you perpetuating that pattern? You think you're actually being different, but really you're just being 20% different or 50% different, which is still good. It's still a change.
Yeah. And you don't need others to tell you whether or not you've succeeded, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean,
you're not looking for validation, but in that putting it out there as a presentation, is that not asking for validation?
It is. And some people may need that. But I think in truth, if you make a decision about how you want to be different, you don't need to make a movie about it.
You don't need to make a movie about it. It doesn't have to be on Instagram.
Right. It can be just a change in pattern. Which is why I asked you about your mom, because you were aware of your own growth, but she has to be different than she was a year and a half ago. No one stays the same.
No.
Our skin changes every day. So
yeah. And I think, and she's, the gift of wisdom and age with wisdom, she is 70 now. So I think just the fact that we were able to have a conversation, which was pleasant. We respected each other. Our tone was calm. That to me is growth on both sides.
So we have a conversation next week with Christian De La Porta, which I'm very excited about.
I'm going to meet him tomorrow.
Oh, good. And you'll love him.
Yeah.
And you. But a future conversation, and maybe we can start it with Christian, is, what is wisdom? What is it? And how do we know, how do we recognize it in ourselves and in others?
Mhm.
And, what's the source of it?
I think that's a really good one.
Yeah, I do too.
Is wisdom different from religion?
Well, is wisdom different from knowledge? Is it different from intuition?
Mm. Where does it come from?
What is it? Is it innate or learned?
Yeah, good stuff.
I would argue learned, but
I would argue innate.
you would argue innate.
Innate.
Well, and that's because one of the reasons for it is that, you're young, and so your wisdom can't be from a lifetime of experiences. I'm older than your mom, and I know that my life experiences have helped me create a more mature understanding of life.
Mm-hmm. Living it creates the maturity. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. I'm going to write that down.
Well,
Next week's
and
gonna be a
then
good one.
and maybe erase it. Who knows?
Not a lot gets erased. It always gets kept because there's always a reason for information and little nuggets. They always come back and you're like, oh, that's what that means.
All right, my friend. Thank you.
Right, my friend. Lots of love to you and
to you.
touch.
Good.
Bye.
Bye.